Well, I mean, we've talked about how, and for our country, I talk about this a lot, right, which is that 25 years ago, there was 18 million people in Australia. Now it's close to 30. In 25 years from now, we're going to start marching towards 40, right? These are big leaps forward. And my issue is, again, not that Australia isn't a big country and all the rest of it, but no one's developing the desert anytime soon. It's the same problem that exists in the UK, where the size and the scale of everything, obviously bigger, right? Which is the infrastructure barely keeps up with 5 years ago, even 10 years ago. There's a bunch of clapped out stuff that nobody's been even thinking about fixing for the past 30 years. You want to keep dropping millions and millions and millions of people on top of it. At some point it breaks.
Well, it does. And I mean, just take Sydney, for example. Look at house prices. Look at rents.
Yeah.
Look at rents in Sydney for people doing, ordinary jobs. The more people you pile into Sydney and the surrounding area, the higher those rents go. So you're absolutely right. Massive percentage increases in population in our cities. What it actually does, it devalues the quality of life of everyone living there, whether it's housing, whether it's access to healthcare, whether, frankly, it's just the traffic driving on the roads. It makes an enormous difference. And if the people you're bringing in are high-skilled, are really adding big tax value, maybe technology value to your country, then you could live with it. But what you find is an awful lot of people that come don't add economically and bring a culture that is completely different to yours. And you've only got to look, frankly, at the pro-Palestine demonstrations that you've seen in your big cities to realise, you've imported a culture who think very differently to the average Australian.
Well, all of those protests stopped, right? Because Australia and the United Kingdom have both done something that even 5 years ago thought impossible, which is to recognise a Palestinian country. Of course, it doesn't end up with the recognition because the significant people in and around that Security Council don't do it. Israel turns around and now says any idea about two-state is completely gone, which is a massive step. Your thoughts on the UK reaction to where your Prime Minister and ours have ended up?
How can you recognise a state if you can't even identify what its geographical boundaries are? And how can you recognise a state when the governing force within it, namely Hamas, is intent on the destruction and death of a country and its people? It is simply a monstrous thing to do. Now, you can criticise Netanyahu, you can criticise Israel, you can do all of those things, but to recognise something that has no actual entity and is in effect run by terrorists, it rewards the abominations of the 7th of October a couple of years ago, and it does nothing to give peace in the Middle East, and it puts the hostages in an even more dangerous position. So I cannot, for the life of me, understand why Starmer's done it, other than he's frightened of the left in British politics. He's frightened, particularly, of those communities that have come into our country in the last few decades and who view the world very differently.
And in part, of course, the former leader of the Labor Party, who's claiming to sort of do his own version of things towards the left of Labor, that being Jeremy Corbyn. I doubt it will be as successful as what you are currently doing when it comes to the right of UK politics. All right, let's talk here finally about Donald Trump and his visit to the UK. Amazing watching him turning up at Windsor Castle. Beautiful to see the speeches, all the rest of it. And then, of course, he comes down and has the meetings with the Prime Minister. A wonderful occasion. And I tell you what, whether it was just an accident or whether it was just a set of stones, what about walking in front of the King? As a loyal subject, you would not even think of this, dear potential future Prime Minister.
Look, I think it's a very minor error. I think the trip was magnificent. I think that the display that was put on by the British military, the very fact that it was at Windsor, of course, which goes back to William the Conqueror. We're going back 1,000 years. I mean, he was beaming. He loved it. It meant so very much to him. And at the press conference afterwards, he was even quite restrained. I could see Starmer sitting there thinking, oh, my goodness me, what's he going to say next? And he really was on best behaviour. So, no, it was a good trip.